So welcome to this podcast where it's Blue Day. For our shirts, we decided to both wear blue.
We thought it would be nice to actually coordinate
Right.
a little bit, have a little, connection.
We actually had zero discussion on this, but showed up in the parking lot going, whoa, same shirt. Same one.
Same color, man. Same color.
Same
not
color.
the same
not
shirt.
The same shirt, right.
I think there's definitely a difference between, and something, this is actually, I've actually had this where I point out it's both blue, and then my client would say something like, no, Chad, those blues are different.
Mm.
And they would be right. They are different.
They are different. And it's all in the way she thinks about it, right? The way you think about it, the way she thinks about it.
Well, okay. Now, is it how we see? This would be a great point of mental versus biological.
Mm.
Here, so I mean, we both perceive these colors differently. I mean, in our spectrum of light that we're actually seeing. I mean, one, there's the fact that as men, we're more statistically prone to be colorblind.
Speak for yourself.
Really? You can see color?
The whole spectrum.
Really?
So
are you messing with me? Or are you being serious?
I'm sure there's things I can't see. I don't know.
That is so.
I'm not colorblind though.
You're not colorblind? I am so colorblind. I
remember that about you.
Yes,
you have trouble with what, greens and blues?
Green. Yes, greens, reds, blue might be in there as well. I believe on the latest colorblind test, I could see zero.
Zero.
As in no color. But I don't think that's true because
so your world here is like watching black and white?
But it's not. I do see color. Like, for instance, I know this is blue. I know this is blue.
You knew that we had the same color on.
I knew we had this. So I see color. But what I understand, I do not see the whole of the color spectrum.
Okay.
Because in those tests, those tests where they're the little circle and they show a number.
Mm-hmm.
You look at it and you're supposed to say what the number is.
You couldn't get there.
It's typically like out of, like, if there's 10, I can see maybe half. Or
so
half is probably a broad number. It's probably more like 3. So out of 10, I probably can see 3. I can tell you there's 3 numbers.
So let me ask you this. Have you had consequences from this issue in your life?
No. Well, I mean, in the sense of, like, for instance, at a stoplight, I see red, yellow, green. So hasn't affected my driving.
Even though green's a problem for you, you can pretty clearly see that it's not red and yellow.
And the other part is I know the placement.
Okay.
I know the placement of the lights.
So you've had this sort of inherited genetic thing that you have.
Right.
And it's had some consequences, some you've had to overcome.
Exactly.
Because of genetics.
Exactly. Now, here's the interesting thing. This is where I believe maybe there's a mental component. Because when someone will tell me your shirt is actually green and not black or not brown, all of a sudden I will go, oh, okay, I can see the green tones. Whereas before that, all I saw was brown or all I saw was black.
So once it's some suggestibility, then you start to recognize.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Exactly. So that's where I'm going. Where does the mental component come in? That it's like, now you've suggested green. In my mind, I think my mind is trying to, like, okay, connect to what does green look for Chad.
So, okay. So then let's say when you were a child, you got locked away, like had some traumatic event in a closet.
Okay, we're trying to say not something that Chad happened, but
right. No,
we're
no.
just
Let's
okay,
just
suggesting. We're doing a hypothetical.
Let's say
okay.
you had a traumatic event and the whole entire closet that you were locked in as a child was blue.
Okay.
And it was just a blue closet for some reason.
Okay. We're choosing blue because we're wearing blue shirts. Okay.
You're locked in a blue closet.
Locked in a blue closet.
Now you go through life, and every time you see the color blue, it like stimulates some anxiety. and you want
Yes.
to avoid. I don't want to look at blue. I don't want, because in your mind it associates with this trauma.
Yes.
So in some sense, you have this way you're thinking about blue that's associated with the past, and now the consequence of that is anxiety.
Yeah. You're talking about like a conditioned.
A condition, right?
Yeah.
But it's still a
Yeah.
thought or a belief that even though it might be subconscious,
Mm-hmm.
that blue is bad. I
Yes.
got to avoid blue.
Yes.
So, it's a belief, and that belief becomes what we call a core belief, something that I carry around with me all the time. That blue is bad, blue is bad, blue is bad, and I've never really looked at that. I just avoid blue. That's all I know.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So if you learn that early that blue is bad, then it becomes kind of a core belief. So on one hand, you have this inherited issue that you inherited that I can't really see blue. But on top of that, I also have this bad environment that I was locked in this blue closet, and now my core belief is blue is bad and I must avoid it.
Well, exactly. And plus on top of that, not only would I avoid, I would assume that maybe there's an interesting thing. So in this sense, do I not only avoid it, do I have a block from even mentally seeing it?
So that could happen. That's some yeah, that's some in-depth stuff there. Got
Yeah.
to get rid of that. But let's say you go through life and you never see blue. So, you're just it so happen that the rooms you go in and the world outside is not blue at all. So you never feel anxious,
Mm-hmm.
right? Until, whoa, this blue car goes by. And then you're like triggered.
Oh,
That
and
good old
then
word triggered. An activating event happens. And now you're going through this core belief that blue is bad. And blue is bad because I got locked in a blue closet when I was 5. And I'm also genetically, I'm confused about blue. I can't see blue because of my color blindness. See that
okay.
track I'm going
I
on
see the
here?
track you're going. I see the track you're going. Eh, Connecting that belief system, that core memory with okay, when I see this, it activates that core memory.
Right, right. That core
And then
belief, that
affects my
core memory.
feeling.
Expects my feeling, the outcome of the event. Because if I'm anxious and frantically avoiding blue, that can affect my life. I mean, what if I have to go to work and there's blue things at work and I can't work that day?
Mhm.
Right. And I've never really followed that chain from this happened when I was 5. And also, I have trouble seeing blue and.
Okay, you know something? Amazingly enough, this takes me to another color story. There was a movie, and forgive me, I do not remember the name of it, which is always frustrating when someone says, "Well, there was this movie," but it had Bruce Willis, and Bruce Willis is playing a therapist. No, it's not The Sixth Sense.
Mm.
This is another movie in which Bruce Willis is playing a therapist, and at the beginning of the movie, his client commits suicide.
Mm.
And after this event, he no longer sees the color red.
Oh, okay. So possibly somehow that followed the same chain we're talking about here.
Exactly this. And notice, n- I mean, it wasn't a conscious avoidance. His brain had this somatic ordeal in which it no longer was able to see red.
Hmm. Maybe the blood or the
Well,
something like
and
that.
that's what the scene kind of alluded to is there was blood around his client who had just killed themselves.
Mm.
And so as a result, but you didn't the viewer, the person watching the the camera did not pick up blood. It picked up, I think it was almost like black.
Hmm.
So it wasn't, you didn't see it. And Bruce didn't see it.
So that's interesting. So these traumas can really affect us in a lot of different ways. But if we
Exactly.
had to say, and we didn't really wear these blue shirts on purpose to drive this point home, but if we did follow this chain that I'm colorblind genetically, and I had a traumatic event with the color blue, and now my core belief is blue is bad, and I see a blue car,
Hmm.
my behavior is going to be to try to avoid that, avoid blue, avoid that car at all costs, and then I may not make it to work because there's a lot of blue cars out there. So it affects me because now I'm anxious and my behavior is avoidance, right? So that's the example of the colorblind thing. So let's apply that to how people get depressed.
Let's do it because I see where you're going, and I like this introduction to how our beliefs and beliefs from and of course early events in our life, how that affects our thinking, how that affects how we feel.
So let's go
So,
back to biological inheritance with depression.
okay.
So some studies say 30 to 50% of our depression is inherited, or at least we're more likely to develop depression if one or more parents also have depression. And it makes sense. We inherit the way we look, or our hair color and things like that through our genetics. So if we have the depression, the way our chemicals in our brain are functioning, then it makes sense that some of it's going to be inherited genetically.
Yes. Yes, I concur with that point.
So but it's kind of like diabetes. If my parents have diabetes, doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to have diabetes. It just means I'm probably going to have to watch what I eat and, do all the things to prevent my genes from activating.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
same with depression. I think if you have if you're genetically predispositioned for depression, probably need to put some things in place. Not to go down certain roads, or to keep your thinking positive, or to exercise, or to stay away from negativity. Right?
Well, exactly. In fact, and we should point out that when we say depression, we also mean all mental health for that matter. Depression, anxiety, bipolar.
Mm.
You can take this to the entire gamut of mental health. That yes, that there is an inheritability part of it. But I like what you're saying. That simply because it's inheritable does not mean it's going to control your life
That it's
or
inevitable.
or be inevitable. Good
Right.
word, like that. Or inevitable.
Inheritable doesn't mean inevitable.
Wow,
Easy,
try saying
easy
that
for you
5 times
to
fast.
say.
Say it again. I want to hear it.
Inheritable doesn't mean inevitable.
Inheritable does not
That's
mean
a lot
inevitable.
of syllables. Take some
Inheritable does
coffee
not
to get
mean
out.
inevitable. Inheritable does not mean inevitable. That's quite the tongue twister. I like that. Thank you for
The
introducing.
profound and wise.
Yes,
So you could have that in quotes, and then
the profound and the wise.
Lee Martin
I
right at the bottom.
Where was that when we were looking for titles? The profound. Thank you for the profound and the wise. Sounds like a soap opera.
So biologically, if my parents were clinically depressed, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm gonna have it, but I may have to watch out for it.
Exactly.
And then let's say these depressed parents weren't the greatest parents in the world, and they kind of exposed me to negativity. They weren't very encouraging. They had negative things to say about me. They told me I'm you're worthless, you're helpless, you're hopeless. These are the messages I got out of childhood. Maybe it wasn't parents, maybe it was friends, or bullies, or whatever. But we had some kind of early learning.
Well, and look at that part of, well, I think before we get into the beliefs of this, can we give first our audience the kind of like the template for
Yes,
thinking,
we can.
and then kind of go back.
We don't have a visual though.
Well, no. I think we can. We'll just use the dots.
So let's say you have biology up here. We're born, we have certain traits,
Yes.
and we can't do much about that because it's our parents.
Yeah. Everything that has been given to us. I like using our hands.
Right. The
Everything.
hands are really driving this
Everything.
point home. I feel like.
Everything. Yes. Everything. Well, imagine a basket.
Oh, somebody just loved it. Thank you.
Oh no. So the camera,
Oh, because I did that.
because
They
you
think I'm
do
doing
this,
that thing.
it loves
Oh,
hearts.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah.
up here with
That's
the
actually
hearts,
pretty
you have
cool.
your biological inheritance. Right below that, all of a sudden you start learning some things about yourself.
Right.
Whether you're receptive to learning it or not, the environment really teaches you a few things. Let's
Yeah.
say if you grew up in poverty, or let's say you grew up abused, or let's say you grew up being bullied. These learnings at 5, 6, 7 teenage years, whatever, lock in your head,
Mm-hmm.
and they're in your unconscious mind, and you're not, thinking about them a whole lot. You just kind of, You just kind of have learned this stuff about yourself and you believed it.
Mm-hmm.
So you have your biology, you have underneath that early learnings. This all becomes the bigger circle, which is what we call core beliefs.
Well, exactly. And something I think that would kind of add to this, in our first 7 years, we are like a sponge.
Mm.
We
You're
are
not
like a
questioning the
sponge.
things you learn at age 5. You don't question it. You just
No.
kind of go on with life, and life, you know, life treats you bad and you don't question it. Or
Well,
your parents or whoever says bad things about you, you're bad. I mean, one of the first things that you hear when you're trying to learn right and wrong is you're bad if you do that.
exactly.
You're good if you do that. So we're already
Exactly.
judging. We're already being
We're already
judged.
judging. And remind yourself, if in the first 7 years, if 90%, if we're all like visual, auditory, our senses are just soaking
Mm.
in all the information.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is the time in your life in which everything around you, you are just in a recording. So imagine your eyes are the camera. I mean, as it says, the windows are the camera to your soul.
Mm.
Your eyes are the camera to your soul, or the eyes are the window to the soul. I think that's it. Anyway,
Beautiful, man.
and thank you. Thank you. Profound and wise, right? And you're recording. So, like you said, all of that early information is coming in to your head, and you're just recording, believing and
You're
believing
bad. You're
everything.
bad.
You're believing
Yeah.
everything.
You're
You're
never going to amount to anything.
exactly.
What is Eric Erickson, developmental psychologist, said the main thing adolescents are trying to accomplish is identity versus being really confused, role
Yes.
confusion. So if you're by the time from age 13 to 18, during this time when we're trying to fit in and we're being bullied, or we're I don't know which group I fit in at school, those are crucial times as well.
Yeah.
And if we don't complete that on the identity side of it, we're going to be really confused as a young adult, which leads into intimacy problems and a whole gamut of things.
Yes.
But we learn a whole lot about ourselves as a child, is what you're saying, like a
Yes.
sponge. And those become, as adults, those become what we call core beliefs. So core beliefs are kind of like, you could say, it's the glasses we wear, how we see the world.
It's how we see the world. Good point. Yes.
So if I think, let's say my core belief is I'm worthless or I'm hopeless. There's no hope for me. I'm completely here. I'm the victim. I'm hopeless. I don't amount to anything. If that's the glasses I wear, then I'm going to be out looking for evidence for it, because that's how these glasses see. And so, oh, look at that. I can't even tie my shoe right in the morning. Oh, I stubbed my toe on the coffee table. Look, I can't even walk. I had a near accident coming to work, and there's orange barrels everywhere. Look, I can't even live in a town. I'm just worthless.
Mm-hmm.
So all these events now with these glasses on are just reinforcing this core belief that I'm worthless. And so that's certainly a depressing belief.
It's a depressing belief. But notice, and because as we're thinking this, remind yourself of this, is that when you're tying your shoes in the morning, it would make sense in our head if we were saying, I'm worthless. But imagine, actually, the mystery is that it's not that I'm thinking I'm worthless. I am thinking it, but what am I probably noticing the most in this moment that I'm tying my shoe?
I'm having trouble.
I'm feeling bad. I'm feeling bad.
I'm not feeling good about myself because I can't even do a simple task.
Exactly.
Like tying my shoe.
Exactly. And so often, and because we're kind of giving you the, almost like the director's commentary with, when you're tying your shoe, you're feeling this you're thinking this worthlessness. Whereas the individual, they're probably honing in on, I don't want to go to school. I don't want to go to school.
That's the behavior.
That exactly. But then they're also having this feeling of, maybe it's body aches, maybe it's like, sickness to their stomach. It's like they feel sick to their stomach. Think of how many times as a kid before school we're going, my tummy hurts. My tummy hurts. And then I'm going to school, my tummy hurts. I know when I was going to school, my tummy hurts.
Mm.
And it's like, is it that your tummy hurts, or is it now this core belief is being activated? I think I'm worthless. I'm worthless. I can't tie my shoe. And how my brain translates that into I don't want to go to school.
Might not be your tummy at all.
My tummy hurts. And it's like that's how my brain is going like, no, 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 no. Your tummy hurts and you don't want to go to school. And notice back here in our core that we can't see. I mean, I think it's good that we're actually using a non-visible example because you can't see your core beliefs,
You can't see them, and I
but
think
they're there.
they're there. And so let's say if you're not aware of these core beliefs, let's say your core belief is I'm worthless because you learned that as a child. You also had biological inheritance with depression. So your core belief is I'm worthless, but you're stuffing it. You don't realize that. And then all of a sudden you get in some trouble at work. You didn't get your report in on time. You messed up you were late, you just didn't, whatever it was, and your boss is starting to come in and warn you. It's just a warning, it's just a talk. But in your mind, that's an activating event that brings out that core belief of, oh, look, I'm worthless.
And now the forecasted future,
Right.
we're going to get fired.
I'm going to
We're
get
getting
fired. My
fired.
boss also thinks I'm worthless. And clearly I can't do my job that I was hired to do. So reinforcing this fact that or this belief that I'm worthless.
Exactly.
And I shouldn't have said fact, but the belief here, when we say core belief, that gives us some space to change because beliefs are changeable. Because not everyone who goes to work thinks they're worthless, and they may even do a worse job. So thoughts and beliefs are very powerful about how we feel and how we act on the world.
Exactly. They influence how we think or feel, and think for that matter, but they influence how we feel. And I think that's when people come to see the therapist, it's so often their focus is how they feel. This is how I feel. This is how I feel. I want you to change how I feel.
Right.
And notice, and I know there's a frustration when we're talking about, well, tell us what your thoughts are. I don't care about my thoughts. I want you to just change how I feel.
Right. And maybe that's what medicine does. Right. Possibly.
It's a combination, but I think also that this is the reason for this podcast is to help better understand, or for you to better understand that changing how I feel, it starts with also changing how I think. Or noticing. Actually, let's notice. Actually, I rewind. Changing how I feel starts first with noticing your thoughts.
Right.
Noticing.
You have to be aware. You have to open the hood of the car before you can fix the engine.
Oh, I love that analogy. Man, you were like scoring with these analogies
right here.
Okay, if there's going to be a short, that's the short right there.
So if you open the hood of the car and you see, here's my core belief of I am not worthy. But there's many others that people carry around with them all day. Like I'm unlovable. Say they just went through a breakup and they really got dumped. Well, that core belief of I'm unlovable comes out as well. And that's how we see the world.
Well, and notice how it comes out. I get dumped. More than likely, the next thought is I'll never find someone who loves me. I will die alone. I will never find anyone.
Core beliefs.
And that is and notice, where is it drawing from?
Right.
And like you said, the core belief it's drawing from is that I'm worthless.
Right.
No one will ever love me. I'm not good enough. We're drawing from that past. We don't even know that we're drawing from it. In that moment, that thought, no one will love me, will notice the event. And that's the whole point of therapy, is noticing the event. We broke up, a breakup. Majority of people are I'm looking for a relationship to be that healthy relationship, that, ever after relationship. How do we get there? Well, logic would suggest we're going to get there by dating a few people, maybe a lot of people. All of those relationships are going to break up until we get to the relationship that's going to last and be your ever after.
But some of these beliefs came from early childhood learnings, right?
Right.
Maybe there was communication from the parents that you're unlovable or not worthy, so some of these are those childhood to teenage years of just, absorbing these unlovable messages in my brain, and now I'm an adult and I think I'm unlovable, and boy, here's reinforcement to that. I just got dumped.
I just got
So
dumped.
there's the evidence. That's because I have these unlovable glasses on. That's how I'm seeing the world. Now, is
Exactly.
there another way to look at the scenario? Like, is there evidence to say has been times in your life where you've been loved? Is
Hmm.
there anyone in the world who has loved you in your life? Is there a pet? I mean, anything, that makes life that can show you evidence to the opposite of this core belief.
So
That's the
notice,
job of therapy.
and I love that because you're just giving the breakdown to, okay, when I'm having this thought that there will never be another, there will never, wow, my tongue twister, there will never be another. Okay, Chad, we
Too much
pause, take a breath.
coffee.
There will never be another person who will love me like this one.
Right.
Wow, thank you. And like you said, the glasses we're looking through in that moment are I'm unlovable. And so notice this is the last person. There will never be another one. And as you showed as a therapist, well, let's examine the evidence for this thought. There will never be another one. What's the evidence that supports it? What's the
Yes.
evidence that doesn't support it?
The same event can happen to any number of people, but the outcome can be different based on the way they think about that event.
Exactly.
And so our thoughts, our beliefs, all that kind of thing can really control our emotions and our behaviors. So one of the purposes in cognitive therapy is to help really look at thoughts and beliefs and how true or not true they are. What's the evidence? If you're looking at this like a scientist, what would be the evidence for and against?
Hmm.
Okay, the hypothesis is I'm unlovable. Let's test that hypothesis. Let's look at your life events. Has there ever been a place where you felt loved, you know, or
Yes.
close with someone? Okay, that's evidence for. What about again? Well, I just got dumped. There's evidence for. Was it because you're unlovable, or were there circumstances in that relationship where you just weren't a good fit? But the emotional mind says, no, no, I'm unlovable. But let's look at the facts. So part of cognitive therapy is really looking at those core beliefs. So what are, as a therapist in your busy practice, what is a good practical exercise that you give your clients to help them really look at some of these faulty beliefs?
Well, I think the first one is that noticing our thoughts, noticing our thoughts. I think one of the best things that you can do, or yeah, it really is one of the best things that you can do, is get a journal. Get a journal. Writing down, and I can tell you so many times when people will say, well, Chad, I don't journal. Well, therapy is about doing things that we don't do and learning how to do things differently. So I encourage people, so let's start with journaling. Even if it's not something you do, journal, because writing down on paper will slow down your thinking because you're having to write the words down. And now you can actually start seeing those words on paper. The ones that are in your head, let's put them on paper. And then we can start now looking at the evidence for and against in therapy.
One real simple thing that we used to do is really identify the negative core belief. And they're usually around, I'm hopeless, I'm worthless, I'm unlovable, I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, you could really break it down to one of those. Most people that are depressed can relate to one of these core beliefs. And it was simply, like flashcards when you were in third grade trying to learn math. You write that core belief on one side, write it out, own it. I am unlovable. Like, that's my thought.
Mhm.
Turn the card over and write down pieces of evidence to the opposite.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, at least my dog loves me. I had a good relationship with my uncle Pete,
Yes.
and anything that would contradict I'm unlovable, write it on the other side. Even if you don't feel it, write the fact. And then you go over those cards like you are learning math in third grade, just by memorization. When I have that thought that I'm unlovable, turn the card over, look at the evidence. 30 days later, this becomes a habit.
Well, exactly. Yes. And notice how changing thinking, it takes practice. It takes practice. So, in fact, as you were saying that, it reminded me of another exercise because core beliefs are hard to find. They are hiding in our head. They're hiding. They dominate our thinking, and yet they're hiding as well. Because remind yourself, these are well, we believe they're facts, right? They're not facts, but they're things that we believe about ourselves, and they dominate our thinking, but they're hiding in our head. And so there's a thumbs up. And so one way to find
How'd you do that?
you just have to right there, and it you'll get no.
I don't know.
Sam, like,
I think that was an audience member that gave us a thumbs up.
so going back to my thought, so one way to find that core belief is in an exercise where it's questions you ask yourself. So, what do I think about the world? That's the first question. What do I think about people? Second question. What do I think about myself? Third question. And fourth question, what do I think about God? And by the way, these questions work whether you're religious or not religious, atheist, Gnostic, heavily spiritual. We all have a belief about God. We all have thoughts on that subject. So please don't be afraid of that last question, what do I think about God? We all have thoughts on that question. So take a separate sheet of paper for each one of those questions. What do I think about the world? What do I think about people? What do I think about myself? What do I think about God? And just list, just put words down. The world is cruel. The world is an amazing place. The world is happy. Whatever the words that come to your mind when you think about the world, list all the words. List all the words. Like cruel, dark, bright, light. Just allow your mind to just be free to roam all over that question.
Thoughts and beliefs are so powerful, and beliefs can be changed. Thoughts can be changed. We once probably believed in Santa Claus.
Well,
Once we
exactly.
found enough evidence to say, wait a second, he can't get all around the world in one night. He can't fit down a chimney. There was evidence to the opposite that this could be a functional system at Christmas. So we
Yes.
said, okay, I'm going to change that belief, right? And it's the same way with depression. It's the same way with our negative core beliefs too. We can find evidence for the opposite. We can write those down in whatever format, and then we start committing those to memory. And that's the purpose of therapy, as for a therapist to help guide you along with that. And I think what you were getting to earlier is, how do you become more aware of the thoughts? Journaling is a good way. Mindfulness practices are a good way. And we'll follow up with a lot of these in future episodes.
Exactly. So this is just a little information about um, how our thinking, how our emotions, how we feel about ourselves, how they are generated. So, any other
I
thoughts?
think that covers it. Our thoughts and beliefs are powerful. And so the purpose in therapy is to help change that. And might check with your colleague on what color they're wearing for the day before you film.
Well, you definitely might trigger some thoughts when you see that color. Anyway, until next time, thanks for listening, and I hope this helps you to continue to seek change.
We'll see you next time.
Bye bye.